Hi everybody. Today I'm going to take a look at those various types of positioning that we have and try to do a demonstration of ways that they might be used while showing how they work. So I've created this page to start that has zero styling to it. I grabbed these off of a local glass, stained glass studio website here in Tigard. And I've dropped the Riverdale Robotics Panda graphic on there as part of the header, just because it's something I had available that was of a reasonable size. I've done nothing to these images to make them a particular size at this point, and I've got 3 links in a nav. So remember that I'm going to go ahead and put in a content piece here, a main, and let's do a definition list. The term is static positioning, and the definition is static positioning is the default positioning. Things simply appear where they are based on where they are in the HTML. This is also called in the flow, right? So everything's just where it should be. And then we've got relative positioning, and this one I'll demonstrate in a moment here. Relative positioning leaves it in the flow. Leaves it in the flow. That is, other things stay exactly where they would be if it were default static, but offsets it according to the top, bottom, left, and right offsets. Okay, so let's take this panda that's here and offset it. So that is in my header, the image in my header. Notice right now Image Emporium is here. I'm going to style that up just a little bit. Let's do, we'll do my navy white shift. We'll double the font size, and we'll do a papyrus cursive font. Okay, and that'll adjust this a little bit so that that all stands out, right? And what I want to do is take that image, so header space image, an image in the header. First off, I'm going to have it have a height of 100 pixels so that it's a little bit more reasonable. And then I'm going to shift it off to the left a little bit so it's like halfway off. Position relative, left negative 20 pixels, and I'm going to move it down by about 15 pixels. There we go. And then, so we'll see that that goes off a little bit. That'll look a little better if I take the body and make it a margin of 0 pixels, so I get rid of that gap. I want to get rid of that white gap. There we go. That might be better to go off even a little bit further. Let's actually make that top negative 20 pixels. So we see that Image Emporium's not moving, and that image is just kicking off a ways. So he can just look like he's kind of part way in. So that's relative positioning. The other thing that we might want to do is do something with fixed positioning. So let's say I want that a footer. We'll add a footer and we'll make it fixed positioning. Fixed positioning means that, oh, did those show up? Yep, there they are. Fixed positioning the element is positioned based on the screen. So left 0, top 0 means it will be at the top left of the screen or the window. I'm going to change that to window. Okay, it is taken out of the flow, so other things move up or over to fill in the space, and it stays there regardless of scrolling, right? Tries to help me out a little too much from time to time. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and close off that DL. And then I'm going to take a footer. Copyright Riverdale High School 2020. Okay, so if I launch this and show you where it is just when it's in the static, it sits right there. What I want it to do is to come out of the flow and just be at the bottom right for however big it needs to be. So I'm going to position fixed, right 0 pixels, bottom 0 pixels. If I do that here, you see that it pops in right down to here, and I could move it a little bit, but that does the job there. And to demonstrate its scrolling, I'm going to give that body a min height of 5,000 pixels. So we can see that now there's a scroll bar here, and as this scrolls, that copyright stays right where it is. Okay, so that gives us relative positioning with the panda, fixed positioning with the footer, and then I'm going to make this nav. We're going to talk about sticky positioning next. So with sticky positioning, the element stays in the flow. Things keep their, its space is reserved, and generally stays where it should be as if it were static until it scrolls to the position indicated by its top, bottom, left, right. Then it becomes fixed there. Okay. So we see that here. Let's go ahead and demonstrate that. We're going to take that nav bar that is all of this stuff and make it position sticky. I did not need to do braces there. Position sticky and a top of 0 pixels. This is a pretty common way to do this. What it means is that it's going to scroll to the top and then stay there. Okay, so I can keep on scrolling and it's going to stay there, and nothing, and it's holding its own against these things here, which might mean that I haven't, no, not that, that. And maybe I didn't close my nav. Nope, I didn't. That will make it behave better. And I probably need to close my main as well. Okay, form stuff properly. Okay, so we see that everything sits there, everything's fine when we're at the very top. We scroll up a little bit, the nav bar stays where it should be, and that static information scrolls down behind it, scrolls up behind it. So in a long page, we'd still be able to see our nav bar. We wouldn't want our nav bar to be this big, of course, and we're going to fix that next. So let's start by styling up our nav a little bit. It's currently position sticky, top 0 pixels. I want those images to be a common width, let's say 75 pixels. And I want the A tags to have a color of white, and I want the background color of the nav to be black. Probably should stick with the navy there, but there we go. Yeah, the navy would be better against this, but it'll be distinct. We'll be able to tell exactly what it is. Looks okay for that for the moment. Okay, might be nicer to do these by their height rather than their width, because they look a little strange that way. So let's give them a height of 75 pixels. There we go. Those look a little more uniform. Now we're going to dig into the challenging position, which is absolute. So what I want to do, well, let's start by defining it. So absolute positioning, the element comes out of the flow. Its position, well, let's start with this. It scrolls as if it were static, generally. Yes, it scrolls as if it were static. We can stick with that. Its position is based on its nearest parent element that is not position static. If all are, then it's based on the page. Okay, so we'll see that definition right here. And then we're going to use absolute positioning on these images. So if I come to my style, nav image, position absolute, I'm going to give it a right of 25 pixels and a top of 5 pixels. Right now what's going to happen, notice that my page now is, sorry, my nav bar now is very small. These came out of the flow, so it stops making room for them. So it becomes small, and because it's sticky, it's positioned over there based on that. So what if instead we gave it a bottom instead of a top, a bottom of 0 pixels. Let's see if this will work for us. So it goes like that, and then it scrolls, and that's going away. So I like the top of 0 pixels better. And then I could change the height of the nav if I want it to stay that big to match the height of my images. But notice that they're all stacked on top of each other because their position isn't based on where they're at in the flow. Their position is based on where this nav bar is. And so they're all in the same place. So what do we do about that? Well, let's do this. Let's make them transparent. Opacity 0. And when we make them an opacity of 0, it's not uncommon to say pointer events none. That makes it so that nothing's going to happen on the, when we hover over it or click on it or anything, nothing's going to happen. And then I've deliberately done this way. Within that header, I put them inside a span. So what I want to do is make it so that when I hover over the span, the image inside them becomes clear. So how am I going to choose that? Well, nav span, I'm going to demonstrate that that will get at that. Border 1 pixel solid black, and well, that should probably be white since I'm in that nav that has a background color of black. I'm going to give them a padding of 2 pixels and then 5 pixels, and a margin of 5 pixels. So now they're there, and this is now transparent because I said that. with the nav image. So I'm going to say, when I hover over the span that's in the nav, I want the image that's inside it to have an opacity of 1. Pointer events aren't going to matter in this case, but this is a common pattern. When you make something visible, you give it its pointer events back. Okay, so oftentimes you read these lengthy selectors backwards. The image that's inside, the space means it's inside, so the image that's inside a span I'm hovering over that's inside a nav. Okay, so if I look at the HTML, the image that's inside a span I'm hovering over that's inside a nav. Okay, so another image anywhere else wouldn't count, even if it's in a span that's not in the nav. Okay, reload, there's no image. Hover over roses, and the roses one appears. Hover over door, and the door image appears. Hover over artwork, and the artwork appears. I could shift this over a little bit. This is going to get a little more advanced. So I've got a height of 75 pixels. This would be easier if I had a solid width, but I can say that I'm going to put this about in the middle. And say instead of that I'm going to put it at 50%. So now it goes in the middle and we see that it looks a little odd. So what I want to do is a calc 50% minus 75 pixels. These are almost square, so let's say minus 38 pixels. So what calc does is it lets you do a little bit of math. Half the width of the nav minus 38 pixels. That makes it look a little bit more like they're exactly right. If I had an exact width, I could put it exactly in the middle. Okay, so now we've got this kind of a result going on. We could take a look at what it's going to look like if I don't make the nav that tall. And I make it like 30 pixels. I could also mess around with the font size to make it taller. That's about right, and then that's there. My nav span, I could say display inline block. That would get that border into the nav a bit. That looks a little better. I like that. And then that sits there. So if I gave that a black border, I'll bet that'd look a lot better. 5 pixels, outset black. The outset's not really doing much for me. Let's try it with an inset. Yeah, not much of a thing going on there. I'm sort of tempted to go just big, make it solid, and like 525, 25 pixels solid black. The other thing that I want is a transition. Makes it look like it's sort of popping out a little bit of the thing. So that's kind of the idea. We now have static positioning. We have relative positioning, which shifts things over. We've got fixed positioning, which holds something in place wherever it's going. We've got sticky positioning, which we're using on this nav bar so that it's always available. And we've got the absolute positioning, which bases its position on its nearest parent element that is not static positioning. Okay, and I can do the one thing I haven't really done, which is to demonstrate how that works. If I take away the stickiness of this make it static, and I reload, we'll see is that suddenly those images are up above, which might in this case look a little better, except for the fact that when we scroll we lose it, but that might look a little better because of that. Kind of like it a little better, but that's neither here nor there. It is now basing its position on the window because no longer is this one is the nav positioned in any other way. It's just position static. So now the position of the images is based on the window. And if I change that back to sticky, that position comes down. And that's where maybe reload. Nope. Did it work? Sometimes it's a little slow. Oh, not that. The image is what we wanted to change. That's why that didn't work. Reload. Okay, so now those sit right off of that. And then when they're here, we just don't really see them. We'd have to move them up a little bit to not see them at all. But there it is. I think that does everything. We've got all the types of positioning. We've got the addition of that calc feature as a little bonus for those of you that stuck through. Thanks, everybody.